ago, your ball club of choice made a move that was so misguided, so disillusioning, so hope-sucking that I couldn't even bring myself to write a column about it. That was the Neil Walker trade. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Pirates. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into football and or hockey. I highly recommend the daily shots that I do on Steelers and Penguins. Yesterday was kind of like that. And you got to understand, when I say that, I'm referring to it from the context of doing these shows, writing these columns, covering this team. Because ultimately, in order to be fair to all concerned, including you, there has to be a belief, I think, and I mean from me, that they're going about it in a good faith way. That there actually is, well, hope as opposed to hope sucking. Yesterday was a hope sucking day. They do that really well, don't they? Ben Cherrington met with reporters at PNC Park yesterday morning, not coincidentally, as the Pirates were playing the National League's worst team and would end up sweeping the National League's worst team, with that opponent, the Marlins, accounting for both of the Pirates' sweeps inside the National League this season. The only other one? That's right, pal, the White Sox. But everything's good and we're all stupid and we don't understand that that doesn't necessarily represent improvement or not improvement or progress or regression. We're dumb. They're smart. This team's almost certainly going to finish with a worse record than it had last year, but they're going to tell us that white is black. Or, depending on the day and how dumb they think we are, that black is white. Cherrington coined a new term over the past week. He brought it up Sunday on his weekly radio show, brought it up again yesterday. It's about speed of improvement. The improvement's happening. It's just not happening fast enough. We have to accelerate it. Okay. So, I mean, I could do this show every day on this crap. I really could. You don't think I'd rather talk about Bailey Falter pitching the way he did yesterday? You don't think I'd rather talk about the emergence of Joey Bart? You don't think I'd rather do another show like the one yesterday where I just invested it all on Andrew McCutchen and his continuing greatness? But they don't let you do that. They don't let you do that because the outcomes don't change. And that's the part that these people don't get. The outcomes matter. And in Pittsburgh, they're all that matter. If I'm Bob Nutting and I walked into that ballpark on Monday night and I see Paul Skeens standing out on my mound and he's striking out 9 Miami batters, and there's 10,311 tickets sold for that event, about half of them actually used, I'm walking right back into the main HQ at 115 Federal and ordering security to order everybody out. It's not that complicated. It's not something that requires layers of this or that or speeding up the improvement or any of that drivel that's now coming from this GM, even as he plots a way to escape what really should be his own fate. How's he doing that? Well, he's gotten rid of 3 people running 3 different departments so far. We knew about the Latin American scouting director. Yesterday, he added the director of pro scouting. That means the person who's recommending trades. And the general, the 4-star general of his analytics army. That's basically saying I didn't mess up. They messed up. They shouldn't have told me to go get Brian Dela Cruz. They shouldn't have told me that Rowdy Tellez would be a better investment than Carlos Santana. It's not me. It's them. I listened to them. I shouldn't have listened to them. And then, of course, he goes to bat for the manager, and that ends up being the thing that, of course, draws all the headlines. He says, and I quote, "I fully expect," end quote, "that Derek Shelton will be back in 2025. Goes on to say a lot of nice things about how hard Shelton works, how hard the staff works, how fun they are to work with, how agreeable they are. I wouldn't change either. And just like the last time that he gave Shelton an extension, it was during that blazing hot start, you might remember, in 2023. under cover of actual wins, one might say. What's he do this time? Waits for the first decent thing that's happened to the team in 2 months, meaning they ran into the Marlins, and does it again. One problem, well, no, there's several problems with that, but one that stands out for me is that he used terminology like fully expect. What are you talking about? You're the head of baseball operations. What's fully expect mean? I've been covering this team for a long, long time. When I hear something like that, that tells me he hasn't had it okayed from above. That tells me that he took this initiative yesterday alone. That tells me that he's not comfortable saying what he said outright. But he wanted to have it on the record. If you go back to late 2019, you can find several examples of this sort of thing from Neil Huntington and from Frank Coonley, who was over Huntington's head and was a lot more talkative than Travis Williams. They would say this and that about Clint Hurdle, or Coonley would say something like that about Huntington, and at the end of the day, it didn't matter. It didn't matter because it wasn't their call. I've told you guys a million times, and I'll end up telling you a million more. Nutting delegates to an extreme. He lets these guys, these general managers in particular, get goofy, power crazy, surrounding themselves with yes people because Nutting doesn't instill the accountability that's needed until he does. And that's always at the very end. As he's told me himself, the day that I can't trust my people to do their jobs is the day that they don't have those jobs. I'm not a fan of that style of management. I'd rather see somebody be more hands-on without necessarily going, full-blown Jerry Jones. But for now, just remember that the only voice that matters in this specific context has yet to be heard. When we come back, J1Q.
It's Gun Storage Check Week. Help prevent unwanted access to your firearms. No one wants their unsecured gun to be used in an accident, a suicide, or a crime. Use lockboxes, safes, and locks to secure your firearms. Learn more at gunstoragecheck.org. That's gunstoragecheck.org. Brought to you by NSSF, the Firearm Industry Trade Association.
Today's J1Q comes from Joe, who says, DK, it takes quite the talented general manager to luck into a generational pitcher, another quality starter in Jared Jones, and still possibly finish with a worse record than the one the year before. I had hopes for Ben Cherrington when he was hired, probably only because he wasn't part of the alleged best management team in baseball, if not all of sports. I haven't heard that one in a while. Joe continues, but it's clear that Cherrington's been an abject failure. It is clear, Joe, and it's past tense. This isn't something where you could convince, or you should be able to convince anybody that there's just some sort of extended continuity that's missing to this process. They've butchered every single facet of team building other than how to win a Paul Skeens lottery. They've had two internal successes. You mentioned Jones. I would call Nick Gonzalez the other. And that's over 5 years. They've had almost zero success, stunningly so. You need to see the advanced breakdowns of Cherrington's trades to see how truly awful they are. And the list of players who he gave up, the value that they carried at the time he gave them up, the mass of them, and then, just for fun, the value that they brought to their teams after they were acquired, and then see that all he's holding in his two hands is one David Bednar to show for all of that. And even if it was peak Bednar, all-star Bednar, it'd still be a laughably low return. 5 years it's a long time. 5 years is the generally accepted, if not necessarily, something that's set in cement, time span for how long a GM gets. But when the GM is charged with, at the time of the hiring, rebuilding everything from the bottom up, and then in year five, we see abysmal depth, abysmal fundamentals, abysmal development with a couple of exceptions, continuing, lingering, dragging abysmal results at the big league level. And then, just for the icing on the cake, the farm system's now 27th out of 30 in Baseball America's organizational rankings. And look, even if BA missed, even if BA might have, misjudged this or that, or might have been a little unfair as to Skeens and Jones coming up, they wouldn't have missed by that much, because there are other services saying pretty much the same about the state of the system where it is now. Cherrington's tried to excuse that by citing Skeens and Jones. Skeens was a cameo guy in the system. He was in and out after a handful of innings. So you're telling me that Jones graduating would have sunk the entire system by like 20, 25 slots? No! All that happened was prospects like Hudson Head, who was the centerpiece at the time of the trade involving Musgrove and San Diego, bombed out. Just nothing came of him. Lonnie White bombed out. Nothing came of him. That's how your system goes down, all you alleged dummies out there, at least what he thinks. They can't figure that out for yourselves. That's how a system sinks like a rock. And if your only priority within that is hiding it, well, that's why you keep your Latin American scouting director around way too long, even though you know he wasn't getting you results, and you just magically come upon the realization this summer that you haven't had a Latin American prospect come up anywhere near Pittsburgh in forever. And you still don't have one anywhere near Pittsburgh. Why fire him now? Well, why fire the director of pro scouting now? And why fire the main analytics guy now? I mean, come on. Come on. What the heck is wrong with all of us? Seriously, we'll do one of these tomorrow, maybe. I don't know. I've got 2 teams in town that I cover that give a crap. This isn't one of them.